Let's start off this second segment with our second fat-soluble vitamin, which is vitamin D. So the body can synthesize all of the vitamin D that it needs with the help of sunlight. So we don't necessarily have to get all of the vitamin D that we need through food sources. We can get some of the vitamin D by the sun. Regardless of whether you consume food sources of vitamin D or if you're exposed to the sun to get your vitamin D that way, it doesn't matter which method it is, but the vitamin D must become activated in the liver and kidneys. Vitamin D plays a role in calcium regulation, so usually we think about calcium being important for bones, but vitamin D is also very important for bones and plays a role with calcium. So vitamin D functions as a hormone to help regulate blood calcium and phosphorus levels, and this is what is helping to maintain bone health and both bone integrity. Additionally, vitamin D helps to stimulate the maturation of cells, specifically immune cells that can help prevent cardiovascular disease, vision loss, and cancer. In children, vitamin D deficiency is called rickets. So rickets is a result of deficiency during childhood, and it's characterized by bowed legs due to weakened bone inability to support a child's body weight. So you can see a nice picture of these bowed legs, a good example of this, in your textbook. In adults, vitamin D deficiency is referred to as osteomalacia, which can eventually develop into or progress into osteoporosis. So osteomalacia is really just poor mineralization of bone. It could still be reversed with adequate vitamin D and calcium intake, but osteoporosis is really full-blown bone weakness, very weak bones, and they're susceptible to bone fracture. So we would like to prevent this over time. Usually osteoporosis can develop with age, so that's why it's important to have adequate bone mass throughout life so that we're protected as we get older. And we'll talk more about osteomalacia and osteoporosis next week when we talk about calcium in our mineral section. Populations that are of most concern for vitamin D deficiency are going to be overweight and obese individuals because they have a lot of vitamin D that's stored in the fat, but this is not necessarily going to be accessible in the blood. So these individuals may actually have vitamin D deficiency, even though they have vitamin D stored in their body. They're just not able to access it. And then as we talked about, vitamin D, we can get it from the sun. People that have inadequate sun exposure can also be deficient. Vitamin D is potentially the most toxic vitamin, and this is most likely to occur with supplements and not through food intake or exposure to sunlight. There's really, as we talk about in a couple of slides, there's really very few foods that contain naturally occurring vitamin D. Most of the vitamin D we get is through fortified foods. So this toxicity is likely to occur with supplements. This toxicity will increase blood calcium concentrations, which can damage soft tissues because it will cause hardening of these tissues. So thinking about if we increase blood calcium, it's going to cause calcification or hardening of our tissues, of our arteries. It could reduce blood flow, and then this could eventually have impact on irregular heartbeat. It can cause nausea, fatigue, back pain, increased urination, and thirst. So how do we get vitamin D from the sunlight? Or from sun exposure. Basically what happens is that ultraviolet light from the sun is shining on the cholesterol compound in our human skin. So you're only going to get this sunlight exposure, your vitamin D, if your skin's actually exposed to the sun. So if you're wearing long sleeves all the time, you're not going to get that exposure. So, you need actual exposure to your arms, to your neck, to your legs, whatever. So when the UV light from the sun is shining on our skin, this compound is going to be transformed into a vitamin D precursor, and that precursor is going to be absorbed directly into the blood. Then the liver and the kidneys, as we talked about before, are going to finish converting the precursor to active vitamin D that can be used by the body. So sunlight recommendations actually differ based on skin pigmentation. So dark-skinned individuals actually need more sun exposure to get that conversion to take place. So they may need up to 3 hours of direct sunlight or direct sun exposure for that conversion, while light-skinned people, 10 to 15 minutes per day is usually adequate. So people that don't spend enough time outside, or they spend time outside but they're completely covered, or they wear too much sunscreen, this can cause some slight deficiencies in vitamin D. And then people who also restrict their intake of animal and dairy foods may also have a lack of vitamin D in their diet. So this is where there's some controversy um, sunscreen, because this could actually block that conversion. So we want to help prevent skin cancer, but we still need that conversion to take place. So there is some controversy with that for sure. Some other factors that affect vitamin D synthesis, so you can refer to this and get more detail in table 4.7, but as we age, our ability to synthesize vitamin D usually tends to decrease. Air pollution or cloudy skies is going to prevent the UV light from reaching our skin. Geography actually plays a role, so if you live above Atlanta, Georgia, you actually are not getting enough sunlight in the winter to stimulate that conversion. People that are inside all the time, have lack of sun exposure, the time of day can affect this. So there's quite a few factors that can affect this synthesis from sunlight exposure. As far as recommendations go for vitamin D, they're pretty consistent throughout life. They do increase, once we get over the age of 70, but for the most part, they're the same for all individuals aged 1 to 70. There is a tolerable upper intake level, which is 100 micrograms per day, but if you're looking at supplements, this will be labeled as 4,000 international units per day. Again, it's most likely to get this toxicity from supplements and not from regular food. As I mentioned before, there are really few foods that contain naturally occurring vitamin D. The best sources are going to be fatty fish, liver oil, beef liver, egg yolks, and mushrooms. And then fortified foods are really going to be our best sources of vitamin D. So you want to check the label and look for vitamin D listed on there. And as we talked about with the new food label changes coming about, vitamin D will be required to be labeled on every single food. So milk is going to be fortified with vitamin D. So you'll see, like whole milk will say vitamin D fortified. All the other milks are also fortified, even if they don't say it's required to be fortified. Many cereals, juices, grain products may be fortified as well. So just be sure to check the label on that. And then remember, you can get vitamin D from sunlight as well. All right, our next fat-soluble vitamin is vitamin E. The active form of vitamin E is called alpha tocopherol. Vitamin E acts as an antioxidant in the body, so basically we can have these unstable molecules in our body, which we call free radicals. These can come from normal processes such as breathing, but they can also result from being exposed to pollution or smoking or anything like that. But what these free radicals do is they disrupt our cellular structure and can cause oxidation and damage, inflammation in our body. So vitamin E is really important as an antioxidant. So it may play a role in preventing oxidation of LDL cholesterol, and then this can therefore help to lower the risk of heart disease and stroke because as we learned before, high LDL cholesterol can lead to heart disease. It's our bad cholesterol. It can also help reduce the risk of other health problems like cancer, again, due to that oxidation and inflammation prevention. And then it protects essential fatty acids and vitamin A, again, as that antioxidant function. Deficiency and toxicity of vitamin E are both pretty rare. So deficiency is rarely going to be seen in healthy humans. We tend to see it in individuals that have fat malabsorption issues. So if they can't absorb fat or they have fatty stools, they may be losing vitamin E and not storing it. And then premature infants who haven't had, the vitamin E wasn't passed from their mother to them yet because that takes place in the last few weeks of gestation. So premature infants may have deficiency of vitamin E as well. Consuming foods high in vitamin E is not likely to result in toxicity. So natural sources, rare toxicity. But supplements is where we're going to see our toxic effects if we consume too much. So supplements can negatively impact this because they can have an effect on anticoagulant medication. And then this can cause stroke and hemorrhaging. So we just want to be careful if we're taking vitamin E supplements. All right, the DRI for vitamin E is 15 milligrams a day, and these needs are increased for smokers. Again, this is related to that oxidation or the antioxidant property of vitamin E. So smokers are going to have more of those free radicals because vitamin E is an antioxidant and can help scavenge some of those free radicals. So the needs are increased. You'll find vitamin E in vegetable oils, salad dressings, margarines, other processed foods that are made with vegetable oils. So when you think of vitamin E, think of oils. So salad dressings is a great example. So think about when you have salad dressing on your salad. This is actually going to help you absorb fat soluble vitamins in that salad. So when we use low-fat salad dressings, this can actually inhibit absorption of fat soluble vitamins. So fat is important in helping to absorb fat soluble vitamins, as we kind of touched on briefly in some of those characteristics of the fat soluble vitamins in general. Vitamin E is going to be destroyed by heat and oxidation, so we want to be careful about cooking oils too long, because this can actually cause some of those free radicals and destroy the vitamin E. So just be careful with heat and oxidation with your oils. Alright, our last fat soluble vitamin is vitamin K. Vitamin K plays a major role in blood clotting, so blood thinners can interfere with the effects of vitamin K. Basically, vitamin K is going to synthesize a protein that helps blood clot, and it's also needed for the synthesis of some key bone proteins. So, as we talked about vitamin D and then calcium, both play a role in bone health, but vitamin K also plays a role in bone health. Vitamin K can be made by the intestinal bacteria, so it's not necessarily that we get it in our diet every single day, and because of that, deficiency and toxicity are pretty rare. The DRI is 120 micrograms per day for men and 90 micrograms per day for women, and it's found in dark leafy greens and vegetables, cabbage-type vegetables, and then liver. So we remember that we can make it in our intestinal bacteria, so it's okay if we don't consume these every single day. Individuals that take antimicrobial medications that's going to destroy the intestinal bacteria, they may actually need a supplement, or they need to focus on consuming foods that are rich in vitamin K to make sure they have plenty in their body. Additionally, babies have a sterile intestine for the first couple weeks of life. So when you're born, you actually receive a shot or a small dose of vitamin K, and that will get you through until that intestinal bacteria has developed. In our next segments, we're going to dive into our water-soluble vitamins. So this concludes our fat-soluble vitamins.